The following are the words of Louis Civello, President of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers risk their lives to protect our communities and keep our streets safe. These officers are the thin blue line that stands between your family and the criminals that would do them harm. We are your neighbors, protecting your neighborhood. Hold the line. Support law enforcement. Stand with the Suffolk County PBA.
The following radio show is live, except for the announcement you're hearing right now.
Welcome back to Your Island Live with your host, Tom Schiliro, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we're moving right along. Every other week, we have the great Louis Civello, President of Suffolk County PBA, comes on and just tells us the comings and goings of what's happening inside of the PBA. But more important, what's happening with our men and women out there that are working every day, that are supported greatly by the people of Suffolk County. That is so clear and evident. I hear it on both sides. I hear it from the general public, and I hear it from our offices in blue. It's just absolutely incredible. Lou is the president again of the Suffolk County PBA, has done just so much to enhance the ability to get things done for us, the public relationship to the criminal justice system, and also to keep our police officers to the ability to do the job that they could to the utmost. Louis Civello, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Tom. How are you?
I'm all right, but I'm suffering a little bit here. Kamala Harris has picked her running mate, and it's Governor Tim Walz. And of course, the first thing I do, and I've done this with Harris, and I've done this with anybody else, Vance, I look at their police record. In other words, what do I mean? I don't mean that they've been arrested, but how they are as a public official relative to policing. And again, Donald Trump will get up on his speeches. And again, I'm trying to be as fair and balanced as possible. I get criticized for this all the time. But, you know, Donald Trump has no problem supporting our police. He says it all the time. He talks about making sure that all our officers have qualified immunity and so on. He's one of the few politicians to do that. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, and I looked at her record. I was trying to be fair and balanced. She supported the Minnesota Freedom Fund. She supported defunding the police department in L.A. They lost about $150 million because of her efforts and so on. And Tim Walz, here I thought we might get a moderate on the ticket because somebody's going to win this race. And again, we tend to look at police issues. You do, I do, and many people. Even the public looks like that, too, because they want to make sure our police officers have the tools needed to do the job. And he's along the same thing, considered a progressive, considered somebody who has advocated for defund and all that other stuff. So what I choose to talk to you about today is because you've been most active in politics. You almost have to. Again, campaigning for various candidates, endorsing various candidates, and so on. You know, your thoughts on all this. Are we coming into a storm, or are we coming into a clearing of the clouds, so to speak? I don't know how to look at it. Lou, what say you?
Well, Tom, I'm an optimist. I think there's going to be a reckoning in this election. I think it's been moving in that direction the last few elections. I think people are sick and tired of this defund the police movement. I think people want safe streets. They want to see police officers out there. I agree with you completely that both Kamala Harris's record and her VP is dismal. Minnesota was ground zero as far as defund the police movement. They allowed rioting. They allowed police precincts to be attacked. They, basically abandoned their communities. She could not have picked a more radical running mate. And, I think I was just in Nashville, Tom, for NAPO's convention. That's the National Association of Police Organizations.
Oh, wow.
Yep. It was a great event. We get police organizations from all over the country that attend that, and that organization does an endorsement for a president of the United States. So in that, they sent out a questionnaire. At the time, the two presumed candidates were, former President Donald Trump and current President Joe Biden. And we sent questionnaires to both of those individuals. I will tell you, in the case of Joe Biden, we got no response.
Wow.
In the case of President Donald Trump, we got an immediate response. So President Trump sent a video addressing the NAPO group of police organizations, said how much he backs the blue, how he supports qualified immunity, how important it is for our nation's police officers to have the backing of the White House. I think, needless to say, Tommy, you can probably imagine in which direction that NAPO went. So NAPO has endorsed Donald Trump, and we're going to share that video, Tom. That video from President Trump on our social media soon.
Terrific.
Yep. We have not done our endorsement here for the Suffolk County PBA yet for president. But we will be doing our endorsement probably in the next week or so.
And that's there was a time, Lou, that you and I wouldn't be able to talk like this. There was a time, if I remember, uniformed personnel, firefighters, police officers, civil servants were not allowed to be involved in politics, and there was a time that we couldn't do that. And I think that was certainly to the detriment. And I'll take our police officers where that couldn't be done. So today, the organizations, certainly starting with the Suffolk County PBA and the Nassau County in New York City, but even the national organizations, the one that you're just talking about, the Fraternal Order of Police, and now have been allowed. And I think it was a Supreme Court decision. You may correct me because I don't know where it came from, but they said, no, you cannot do that to police officers or anybody in the uniformed services. You have to give them the right to get involved in politics. Politics is the foundation of how we get things done. And we see what's happened here in New York. You guys have been fighting. I keep referring to that press conference that you went with the DA back in early January to try to get things changed here in New York State, and how we just have bullheaded politicians that don't see it, which is why we suffer with crime rates right now. And what's needed for our police officers, our police officers need to be protected. We need the restoration of 50A here under the civil service law in New York State, and how important that all is. So I think we should never give up. And when I say we, it's the public and the police standing together, because you could never find one single issue other than criminal justice and public safety and policing that binds everybody together, particularly the communities in Suffolk County. Your thoughts on that, Lou?
Yeah, most certainly. There's always been a movement, Tom, to make police officers second-class citizens, to abridge our rights, to prevent us from getting involved in the political process, from having an opinion. And I think that would be a terrible mistake. It would be to the detriment of our country to have that happen, because we really are a counterbalance to some of the radicals out there. We're the only ones really pushing for public safety and public safety reform.
Yes.
I think a great example of that, Tom, and the DA here in Suffolk County, Ray Tierney, has led the fight when it comes to fentanyl. Now, you think that fentanyl would be a non-controversial issue, right? This is just a common sense issue. It's, fentanyl doesn't discriminate. It doesn't, check if you're Republican or Democrat when it poisons and kills your children. Fentanyl, I don't understand how anyone would be against, preventing fentanyl from coming into our country, from strengthening the laws, from holding the dealers accountable for their actions. But when I tell you, Tom, it is so difficult to move the needle when it comes to some of these laws in regards to fentanyl. Yeah. So right now, you have to have a football stadium or enough fentanyl to kill a football stadium full of people in order to get held on bail, which is crazy when you think about it. Chelsea's law, which is one of the laws that both the DA and, my members in the PBA are pushing for, it was called death by dealer, to hold these dealers accountable. When they sell enough fentanyl to know that they're going to kill somebody and that person dies, to have some accountability for that person's life, then that dealer should be held, as if they committed a murder. But moving these laws, I tell you, the radicals up in Albany, you would think, knowing the damage and how many lives, young lives, that we're losing to this deadly poison, that they would be willing to work and pass some of these laws, but we're having such a difficult time getting that done. And for that reason, I think is a great example of why you need police unions, why you need us to put in legislation, why you need us talking to the public. Because if you don't, these elected officials, they abandon you. They are kneeling and kowtowing to the radicals.
But, to your point, the strength of, let's say, a union, it could be police, it could be anything else, but let's take policing just in New York State. The strength of the union movement, particularly when it comes to police, and what police officers and police unions advocate for, is what the public wants. That's what citizens want. They're on the same side. Now, I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's close. It's like 90%. So if you look at the goals, particularly legislative goals of policing to try to make people safe, that's really where the people stand. You see, so it becomes a very, very positive movement. It's not just a union movement for the benefit of the workers. It's not like that, particularly when it comes to public service and particularly when it comes to public safety. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that. You can go through a list of of programs or a list of legislation that you're proposing as the president of Suffolk County PBA, and you put that out to the general public, they'll agree with you almost 100%. And I think that that's something that has to be underscored also. You know, when I look at the Harris-Walz ticket, and I'm glad you said you're an optimist, because this ticket worries the heck out of me. These are very, very progressive individuals that don't see the way we're seeing it. They certainly don't see it the same way that the people of Suffolk County see it. Right now, Trump is showing a 14-point lead in Suffolk County because they view that as almost the right side of the issue right now. But these are very progressive individuals. Again, I mentioned the Minnesota Freedom Fund, the bail programs, all of that, defunding the police. This is the programs that they will push. And yes, they have a certain percentage of the far left mentality that bring this out. But by sitting, if everybody was to sit on their hands and do nothing, this could be the future of America for 4 years. That's what scares me, Lou.
Yeah, it scares me as well. When you look at that Minnesota Freedom Fund and how they bailed out, criminals, and how they sort of just try to make that disappear. That's one of the scariest things, Tom. And I think in the case of President Trump, he's at a severe disadvantage in some ways, because it's not just him versus Kamala Harris. It's him versus Google, him versus Meta, him versus Netflix, who they're one of their vice presidents just walked over $7 million to the opponent. And, that really is what puts him at a great disadvantage when it comes to getting elected, because when you used to go back and sort of 1984 style, try to just change the record to say, oh, we never did this. We never bailed out these criminals. And Google and these social media and tech companies have the ability to kind of just go back and change history.
Yeah.
So that really is scary. But I think the American people aren't fooled so easily. I don't think our memories are that short. We certainly remember, we were around when these people were bailed out. We watched the riots. We watched the police precincts burning.
Yeah.
I don't think people have forgotten yet. And I can tell you, certainly we in the Suffolk County PBA have not forgotten that. And we haven't forgotten here in New York State, where they've released 42 cop killers.
That's right.
In a very short period of time. Cop killers. So you're talking about, bailing out criminals. These are people who murdered police officers who are being routinely now given parole here in New York State.
Yeah, right.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And it's something that we need to push back on. Tom, we're bipartisan. We try to work with both sides. But as we get closer to the election season and we have to make a decision, these cop killers being released and some of these radical laws really weigh heavily in our endorsements. And I encourage all of your listeners to go to our website, www.suffolkpba.org, and take a look at our endorsements, because we really weigh those carefully. And like I said, a lot of these issues really do influence how we make those endorsements.
Yeah, and as we get closer to vote, I'll be reminding the folks to do that too, because it's just so important, just to get an idea, folks, where do the police, where our great officers stand on the issues relative to the candidates that are running, because it is that important. And again, considering the undercurrent in Nassau and Suffolk County and how they feel about police, I believe that there's only one way to vote, and that's certainly to vote for who's going to do the best for our law enforcement, because it affects us 100%. When we go back to those dark days in reference to the police precincts being overwhelmed, I guess that was the spring or the May. I think it was April or May of 2020 was the George Floyd incident. Those were very bad times. Those were a rush to judgment, which is really what happened in that instance, and how many police departments, we can include New York City, outside of City Hall, and the riots that took place there. Every major American city had some sort of riots, anti-policing riots, and so on. And more could have been done. The folks that listen to this radio program remember all the calls that we got. They were looking at this and they were upset over it and what was taking place. Those are days that I would like to forget, but sometimes we can't forget that, because that's out there. That's why I fear that a political movement in that direction, which definitely now includes Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, that is a scary proposition. And that's like a call to action. And I believe it is a call to action for a more common sense approach to policing. And I'm taking a radical point of view, and sometimes I try not to say it, but I believe the trial, and you don't have to respond to this, of Derek Chauvin was a put-up trial. I believe that George Floyd died of fentanyl overdose. It was clearly in the autopsy. I mean, you said it yourself. How many people can die from fentanyl? He had fentanyl in his system when he died, and I think that should have been explored more as to the cause of death, as opposed to pinning a murder charge on a police officer. I think it's been the biggest travesty of justice that's out there and should be re-examined. But nobody's interested in it. Not even the United States Supreme Court wanted to give him a new trial. So, again, I don't expect you to comment on that because it's very controversial. But I believe that this whole thing started having to do with fentanyl. And I think that was a big part of it, Lou.
Yeah, certainly, Tom. And I don't shy away from controversy. I think you're exactly correct. I don't think that Derek Chauvin got a fair trial. When you have a mob outside the courtroom, threatening violence if they don't get the outcome they want, when you're putting the jury in fear and the judge in fear, it's impossible to get a fair trial at that point. I can tell you when I first watched the video, that video, to watch it, I can tell you it's not how I would have handled that call, certainly. And it was very easy, I think myself included, to kind of jump to conclusions when it came to the actions taken by Derek Chauvin. But then as more information slowly came out and you started looking at the autopsy, the amount of fentanyl in the individual system, et cetera, it became pretty clear that fentanyl, is what he died from. Yeah. And it's tragic to lose somebody, but we also should have made this individual, George Floyd, a hero, which it seems, we've erected monuments to him, making it as if he was some sort of stellar individual who was a hero to this country. When in reality, this is somebody who put a gun to the belly of a pregnant woman, right, as he was robbing her. Exactly. So this was not a person to admire in any way, shape, or form. And both President Biden and Kamala Harris have recently tweeted their support once again for that George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which would be terrible for our country. It would remove qualified immunity. Yeah. And I know you have a very educated audience, and most of them probably are pretty familiar with those terms, qualified immunity, and what that is. It's not what the left paints it as. The left would have you believe that this is some sort of blanket immunity that police officers enjoy. Nothing could be further from the truth. This simply says if you're acting in good faith, if you're acting in accordance with your rules and procedures, and something happens, something goes wrong, which, policing, Tom, as you know, is not an exact science. There are any number of variables, things that can occur out in the field where things can go wrong even if you do everything right. So you can do everything right, and still have a negative outcome, get sued, and then lose your home if you don't have qualified immunity, right? And not only do police officers enjoy qualified immunity, so do judges, so do teachers, for that matter. So you have people from all walks of life that have this. The only group that they want to pull it away from is a group that makes split-second decisions, which is unthinkable. You don't want to take it away from judges. You don't want to take it away from teachers, but police officers who are risking their life, who have to, in a fraction of a second sometimes, make a decision about life and death. In that case, if the police officer gets it wrong, you want that police officer, not only to perhaps lose his life out there, but if he gets it wrong, you want him to lose his home and have his family lose their home. It's shameful, and it's shameful that both President Biden and Kamala Harris are supporting that. Right, exactly, and we need to. I particularly this year, a policy of education and making people realize that. But you're right, the audience that listens to the show, but your explanation of qualified immunity just underscores how important that is because of the nature of policing and what has to happen. Officers are asked, as we all know, are asked to make split-second decisions in a lot of instances and come across with some very, very difficult situations. I ask people to consider, put yourself in the position of our police and what they have to stand up to. It's absolutely incredible. It actually goes almost beyond the human ability to deal with events. And we've seen it in so many different times, and we're so lucky, particularly here in Suffolk County. What they're able to do, and a lot of that has to do with our training and the ability for the support services and so on. But we should always be vigilant. And if one thinks about it, how important it is that the nature of politics, policing, and this coming election, how important it is, Lou. Oh, absolutely. This is a critical election, both for policing and for our country. I think people are engaged. People need to get out there and vote. And one of the things I would say to people here in New York State is you have an opportunity to early vote. And I think some of our friends on the Republican side of the aisle have shied away from that, and they tend to wait for whatever reason to Election Day. I would say don't do that. You need to get out there, and you need to vote early. Lock your vote in. You don't know what's going to happen. Look at that special election between Congressman Swazi and Mazi, who were both running for that position. And then we had a snowstorm on that day, right? So how many people didn't get to the polls because of the snowstorm, and their vote never counted? So lock your vote in. You have 2 weeks prior to election to vote early. I think anywhere in Suffolk County you can go to vote. We'll have all that information up on our website where you can go to vote. So get out there early, lock your vote in, and make sure it counts.
Yeah, again, once again, amen to that. It's just something I know I take advantage of early voting. Once again, Louis Civello, President, Suffolk County PBA. Lou, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Always a pleasure.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we get back,